Hey y'all, it's your girl, Dr. Makeba, host of the Healthy Woman Podcast, a talk therapy platform curating healthy conversations so that women like you can serve God while also pursuing an optimal state of holistic health. Hey y'all, welcome to the Healthy Woman Podcast. It's your girl, Dr. Makeba, and I am your host. I am, as always, very excited to have you here joining us on this episode. I'm really excited about this episode. Before I even get into the specifics of introduction, I'm excited. I was just talking to my guest about the fact that this is the very first financial wellness episode that we're doing on the Healthy Woman Pod. And if you know anything about this whole platform, you know that we focus on a set of wellness elements, financial wellness being one of those elements, but I haven't quite dug deep into financial wellness yet. And so just from a personal standpoint, I am looking forward to this discussion. So let me just say that as a precursor. Anyway, if this is your first time here joining us on the Healthy Woman Podcast, allow me to welcome you. You are no longer a guest. You're no longer a visitor. You are now a member of our family. So that means you have to keep showing up, keep coming back to check us out here on this platform. A couple of things that I just want to remind you of. Number one, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do me a favor and go over to the Healthy Woman Podcast YouTube channel and just subscribe for me. We are on a mission to get to 100. Y'all, one thing I know about this, trying to build a community and a platform from scratch, is it is some of the most ghetto process and I have ever seen. And I'm not new to it, but I am new to it from a YouTube standpoint. And so I'm still trying to learn the whole YouTube platform. But what I do know is algorithms on any platform really matter when it comes to how much something is shown. And I know that an algorithm is tested based on the engagement that it gets, right? And so if you can do me a favor and just subscribe to the YouTube channel and then share it out to somebody. I always say that's my second thing, is to share this episode out with just one girlfriend. You're more than welcome to share it out with many, but I just personally ask you to always share it out with just one person, because that instantly allows us to double our impact with just a small commitment from you. So please make sure that you're, number one, subscribing to the YouTube channel, sharing it out to somebody, anybody. And then if you're looking at this from our streaming platforms, which is the Apple platform or the Spotify platform, please make sure that you are giving us a rating, a high rating. On Apple, it's 5 stars. Maybe on Spotify, I need to, before my next episode, I need to quit acting like I don't know about Spotify, because I always be saying that. I always be like, I don't know what spot, because I'm an Apple girl, so I have no interest in understanding Spotify. But for the case of point in my podcast, I think I probably should have some interest in Spotify. I think you can give star ratings or something like that. If you can, please, whatever the highest rating is that you can give me over on Spotify, I ask that you do that. Right? Because again, the more that those streaming platforms see that people are engaging with it and that they're rating it and that they're commenting on it, then the more that they will be inclined to push it out so that people can see it. So those are the things that I always try to open up our episodes with, just to keep you reminded of what I need for you to do as you are becoming a part of the Healthy Woman Podcast family. So we have our visitors and we have our OG members, our original gangster members. Everybody now is a part of the family. I personally want to say thank you for checking in with us, tuning in with us, listening, watching, whatever your jam is. Thank you so much for being here with us. Now, all of that is out the way. Let's go ahead and jump into this conversation today. So I have the pleasure of always speaking to some dynamic women. Always have the pleasure. I have said this before. If you do not use social media responsibly and to your benefit, you are missing out on some of the most amazing people, women, men, whomever, that you could ever get to know. And this particular lady, who is a powerhouse in the financial wellness space, that's how I connected with her. We became friends. I don't even know. We just became friends. I'm not even sure, Nisha, how we became friends on Facebook. But I'm totally open to when people send me friend requests, or when I see people and I send them friend requests, because I look at their profile and I'm like, oh, they seem really interesting. And so we became friends on Facebook, and I just watch people. Like, I watch what they're all about. I watch what they do. I watch what they talk about. And because I am now a 50-year-old woman, financial wellness is a big deal, right? We hold a certain level of responsibility and accountability when it comes to our finances. And I always say that the Healthy Woman podcast is not specifically for African American women, but particularly for African American women, because I'm African American, right? And most of the time we attract what we look like. And so I often have a lot of my listeners and a lot of the women who watch the podcast who look like me. And so maybe indirectly I'm speaking to African American women, but all women for the most part have a responsibility to become financially well. And what we do know is that when you're unwell in any part of your life, whether that's emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever, you're just not able to show up optimally. You're not able to do the things, that on this podcast, the one thing that I am really big on is making sure that women are well so that they can fulfill purpose God's way. That's my thing. That's how I lead my life. That's how I mentor other women. That's how I coach other women. That's how I talk to other women, is that we are placed on this earth for a purpose. And God is not independently concerned about us. He is wholly concerned about us. That's why he gave us a body. That's why he gave us all these different parts and all these different concerns. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we are well. So I'm going to introduce Miss Lanisha Mohip, who is our guest today. Hi, Lanisha. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for agreeing to be here. I know when I reached out to her, y'all, funny conversation real quick. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hey, can you turn down the heat just a little bit?
Okay. I got you.
D did me a favor by turning on the heat in the studio because I'm always chilly and my nose is always running. God, dog, it feels like hell in here. This is the beauty of having a podcast with family, right? Because, man, shoot, I feel like I'm about to combust. And so D doesn't know, he was really doing me a favor, but I am 50 and menopausal. And that junk don't stay awake for a long time. He was in the right frame of mind, but Lord. Okay. So, funny conversation. I reached out to Nisha and I said, hey, I would love for you to be on the Healthy Woman podcast. I love your platform. I love what you're doing, financial wellness. I would really love for you to be in the studio with me because just, being in the studio would be really great for our conversation, blah, 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 blah. So Nisha, in true Chicago form, right? Because I'm not from Chicago. I'm from Florida. I don't know. In Florida, we can get from one end of the city to the other end of the city in about 30 minutes. And everybody can just be together. Not in Chicago, right? So Nisha was like, her first question to me was, where are you at? And I was like, oh, well, I'm on the south side. I'm in Beverly. And she was like, girl, listen, we're going to do this virtually. It's going to take me about an hour and a half. And then when she told me where she was and I looked, I was like, oh, no, ma'am, that's not going to work. And I appreciate that, like knowing her boundaries and really understanding like what's going to work the best for her to show up. She didn't say no, but she did say, can we do it this way instead? And I was totally open to that. But I just think that's so funny because one of the things that I learned when I moved to Chicago was how it's not true to form when you put in the GPS where you're going and it says that it's only 3 miles away. 3 miles in Florida means 3 minutes, right? A minute a mile to get somewhere. 3 miles in Chicago going to take you a good 20 minutes to get there. On a good day.
Yep. Depending on the county that you're in, right? So
depending on the county, depending on people's mental state. Like, is everybody out today? I'm like, it could be like 11 o'clock in the morning and I'm trying to go somewhere because, I'm working from home. I'm trying to go somewhere. And I'm like, why ain't nobody at work today?
Well,
my husband's like, why you ain't at work today? Like, I am at work today, but I had to go run an errand. He was like, well, they are too. But yeah, Chicago is, man, big city living for this small town girl was an adjustment big time. So I just wanted to say that that was really funny to me. But we're here and we are virtual. And again, I appreciate her being here today. So let me introduce our guest, Lanisha D. Mohip, MBA, right? And MHRM. What does MHRM stand for?
A
That's
master's in human resources.
resource. Okay, that's what I
Mhm,
thought. Human resource management.
mhm.
Okay. All right. So she is a 10 plus year experienced degreed corporate accountant, finance writer, and contributor with CNET Money. She has been featured in several finance publications and partners with women owned brands and businesses in growing through the improvement of their financial processes, which ultimately saves them time and money. Since time is such a valuable commodity for women, building a life around what you love is a top priority. As more women use their skills and hearts to build profitable businesses, she believes supporting women CEOs through financial education, corporate accounting knowledge, and being system savvy will empower women to make confident, and she put confident in all capital letters, confident money decisions so they can stop winging it. Child, we're going to talk about that winging it. I know for a minute I have winged some stuff. And I had good intentions. I really did. So anyway, thank you, Nisha, for being here. Your bio, and that was y'all, that was the short bio, by the way. Nisha has a long bio that we don't have time to read. But this chick is so bomb. I'm just I always love meeting women who are just smarter than me in certain ways. Like I don't have a problem at acknowledging when women are smarter than me. I know sometimes we find people that don't want to admit that other women are smarter, but she's smarter than me. Let's just call it what it is. And when it comes to this stuff right here that we're going to talk about today, hands down, she's more learned than I am. And she's an expert. And so I hope that in this, that we are able to teach you some stuff, that we're able to make you aware of some things. What I do know about money management, what I know about financial wellness is that it is taboo to talk about this stuff because I don't know if it's because of what we haven't been told, if it's because of a cultural approach. I don't know what it is. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit, but people don't like to talk about money, not understanding that money contributes in so many ways from a large standpoint with how we live and how we do what we're supposed to do. So I am really excited about this. I can't say that enough. But before we get started, let's have some rapid fire questions, Nisha. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. What is your favorite movie?
Mm, um, The Bodyguard, Whitney Houston.
Oh, Whitney. I forgot about that movie.
Yeah, Whitney's like my auntie in my head. So
Yeah.
like she's like that family member that you met once and you connected with, but you never got a chance to really like build a bond.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's Whitney for me.
Yeah, Whitney is, yeah, she was amazing. You know what? I forgot about that movie, but I saw that movie a few times. I did like it. Anytime
Mhm.
I talk to somebody and I ask them what their favorite movie is and they tell me, I always be like, okay, that sounds like something I need to go home and watch later because I just
Mm.
be wanting to watch movies. Okay, so number 2, favorite city to visit.
Ooh, probably Atlanta
Why?
because by us being in a city that's so segregated,
Mm,
I feel like when you get off the plane in Atlanta, there's a sense of pride in the spirit of blackness.
mhm.
And I don't get that here in Chicago
I agree.
unless you're in certain neighborhoods. But throughout Atlanta, I feel like it's just a calmness.
Mhm.
It's a nervous system rebalancing of just black pride
Yeah,
for me.
yeah. I think and what I love about Atlanta and even Houston and maybe even the DC area and surrounding areas is there's this affluency among
Hmm.
Black, right? Where when you think of the word affluency, typically and generally speaking, we have not always thought of affluency and linked it to Black.
Hmm.
But when you think about cities like Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston, DC. I'm with you though. When we think about Chicago, we don't think about that.
No.
We don't think about that. And now that you say that, I 100% agree with that. When I moved to Chicago is never like on my bucket list of places to even visit, primarily
Mm.
because it's cold, right? And so I'm from Florida. I did not have a bucket list of wanting to go anywhere that was cold. And it's just the way that God orchestrated my movement and
Mhm.
had moved to Chicago for reasons that were unbeknownst to me at the time, but have, over time started to manifest and come to light with me. And I see things now. My husband always talks about, and a lot of people that I talk to as well talk about the segregation of
Mhm.
Chicago. And I see it when I look at all, like they say Chicago has, and I can't even remember the number, but there's like double digit number of communities in Chicago.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So there's all these, it's so much segregation. And I don't even know if we get the opportunity to be integrated the way that we need to be. So thank you for that. I agree. Atlanta is amazing. It's a very beautiful city. I feel like what they always say Atlanta is full. I don't know if anybody else can move to Atlanta because
Beyond capacity.
a
Yep.
lot they got a lot going on there, but it's a
Yep.
beautiful city. All right, my last question for you. Favorite music genre?
R&B hands down.
Rhythm
Like,
and blues.
I get why our parents and grandparents were like stuck in a decade or a certain time period with music,
Mhm.
and I get it. I respect it.
Yeah.
And it's Jodeci forever. So,
So would it be safe to say that that the decade of music that you're stuck in is the 90s?
hands down. Either
Absolutely.
90s, 2000s.
Girl,
Hands
I'm
down.
like 80s/90s. I was born in 73.
Okay.
So I am definitely 90s because that was high school for me and my early 20s. Love
Mhm.
90s music, love it. And I would say 80s, maybe some 2000s, but
Mhm.
the 80s and the 90s. But man, the 90s, nobody can beat that.
Yeah.
That is the most comforting decade of music
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah. And
ever,
it
ever.
was just and I'm pretty sure this is for every generation, but just the awakening of, an identity and your emotions being kind of plastered through the music, and you try, even though we're not necessarily taught a lot of the processing of growing up in adolescence.
Yeah.
I feel like 90s music talked about the biological changes of wanting to be sexual. And like, I don't
Mhm.
know, it's just a really good time period of getting your emotions in
Yeah.
music, I think.
No, I agree. I
Mhm.
totally understand. I mean, when we listen to when we think about the different artists who make up the 90s decade, right? In that genre, that generation of music, um, it's almost nostalgic. So
Yeah,
I
very
know
much.
when I listen to something, my husband's a DJ, so when he plays something and I hear it, this is with music in totality.
Mhm.
But when I listen to something from the 90s, primarily because it's the decade that I am so connected to. So much of my life, like I went to the military in the 90s. I graduated from high school in the early 90s, went away to the military in the 90s, got married first time late 90s. So many different things happened in the 90s in that decade
Yeah.
that when I hear a song that comes up, I can immediately know my mind goes back to exactly what I was doing at that time.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm sure that's like that with anybody, with the decade that they're so strongly connected to. But for me and for you, it's that decade. It's just
Mhm.
something about how music was created. I don't know what's going on with music today. I can't even when I think about the music, this is and a lot of younger people would be like, "She's just saying that because she old." I don't understand. Possibly,
Yeah.
possibly. But when I listen to the music now, I'm trying to follow the message.
Yeah.
So when we think about and this is something that my husband always says, when we think about the music back in the day, we can listen to that music now 30 years later and still feel a way.
Yeah, because they told a story. They
Sure.
gave you the vivid image of whatever message they were trying to convey.
Correct.
But now, because not only is our attention span so much shortened, but
Mhm.
the storytelling is gone and
Mhm.
the messaging is so blurred.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out the
Absolutely.
beat and why you can't stay on it. So it's
Absolutely.
just like
Absolutely. I ask the question 30 years from now, is anybody going to be listening to this? Like, is your music going to die in about 10 years, which is so unfortunate because music is a language.
It truly
So
is.
what's going to happen in 10 years when someone wants to pull up music to listen to? You know what they're going to pull up? They're going to go all the way back to the 80s and the 90s.
Yep.
And they're going to pull up the music that actually sings to their soul.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that's wild. But and I could talk about music forever because I just love music. But that's why I wanted to end on that question just to kind of see where you were. But I agree with you. Rhythm and blues, R&B, number one, my favorite genre. So it's R&B, and then I go right into Christian instrumental or gospel music.
Okay.
When you think about gospel and R&B, sometimes they are interconnected.
Absolutely.
Because you use some of those chords and some of how to like kind of make melodies and make new messages and stuff like that. So, but that's culture. That's our culture. So,
Yep.
All right, Nisha. Well, that was a great introductory conversation about music as we get ready to talk about financial wellness. So, as we get ready to get started, before we dive deep into this, I know that your focus is with women because when I was talking, when I introduced you in your bio, women was there. That's who you connect with. So I think the first thing that I want to talk about is why women? Like, what was the light bulb within you? What went off that said, you know what? I see a need here. I'm going to focus on these people. What is it about women? And then the types of women that you opt to work with. Let's talk about that.
I feel like my initial goal was to help everyone Black and brown. Until I realized that men just approach decision making and problem solving and letting that shield down a whole lot different than women. And I could relate to it. So the only man that I've really had a really close relationship with has been my husband. So I only have one perspective. And I had an interaction with the prospective client's husband, and I was just like, listen, I'm not here to sword fight with you. Okay, I am here to help your family. And I don't do the combative interaction. I don't do arguing with adults. I'm very much like, here are your options. I'm going to be with you, whatever decision you make. I just want to support you and create a safe space for you. So it's not about dominating any relationship. And I just felt like with the men that I was talking to, it was like trying to figure out a way who was the dominant party. And I just like, nah, I'm not dealing with it. I don't want to deal with that. Yeah. Whereas with women, I found when women get to a point where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, it's about the mission. It's about the goal. It's about, having the space to communicate to somebody, whether in confidence or with vulnerability, the ability to, they just want to learn. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is easy for me. I don't have to, take off a mask like I had to do in corporate. I'm going to stick with women. And then I had an interaction with a white woman where every January I go on vacation. That's my birthday month. I'm big Capricorn energy. So, and I'm introverted. So I usually give myself 30 days to just not talk to people, be on calls. And that one interaction, she's, emailing, messaging me about her bookkeeping. I'm like, ma'am, I'm in Puerto Rico. And I mentioned on the call that I'm not doing any work. So just that crossing of the boundary reminded me of what I escaped in corporate America. And I was just like, nah, I'm going to stick to Black women. And so that's how it evolved to me unapologetically saying that my offers, my messaging, my marketing is for people that look like me. And it took me until literally last year to be comfortable saying that because I always felt like I needed to serve or say that I serve everybody, when in reality, Black women is the reason why I made six figures. Yeah. Black women is the reason why I'm able to travel. Black women have always said yes to me
Mhm.
when everybody said no.
Mm. That's good. That's
So
yeah,
I was
that's
like,
profound.
stop being scared and just fall in. And it's literally because of Black women that I'm able to just be authentic and comfortable and
Mhm.
still growing in my voice. So unapologetically, that's who I serve.
I think that's profound, and I particularly think that's profound because whether we know it or not, whether we realize it or not, we trust what we look like.
Yep. And I
We
didn't realize that until I had to start a business.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
came to realize the Hispanic community trusts their people. Yes, you have good intentions, ma'am, but
Um,
you're not us, and we
mhm.
don't want to work with you.
Mhm.
We,
Hands
we
down.
don't care what you're talking about. And
Mhm.
then I had to trust that with, white women and their husbands. Yes, we worked together for 6 years.
Mhm.
I'll welcome you in my home, but I'm not going to tell you the truth.
Mm.
And so I was like, so this niching down that y'all was talking about, you coaches, you were right.
Mhm.
You were right.
Yeah.
And it was like a slap in the face, like getting all of these not direct no's, but more so like those cultural non-verbal no's.
Mhm.
And no, we don't want to work with you, but we'll be your cheerleader, but we'll never be a client.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. This is something I had to kind of get over, like get it off my chest.
Mhm.
But it's just the reality and the nature of growing up in America, I think.
And did you see so when you found yourself in that space from time to time, obviously early on, did you ever feel the need that you had to prove yourself
Always.
to to the people that didn't look like you, the people that said, "I'm gonna support you, but I'm never going to trust you to
Hmm.
help me with my finances or help me move, traverse through this journey of financial wellness or, whatever the focus was at that time." You found yourself trying to prove it, and then maybe at times, I don't know, finding yourself maybe compromising who you truly were because it's hard sometimes for us to embrace the fact that some people are just not going to see in us what is there, even though other people do. And
Hmm.
even though I've proven myself or proven to you myself who I am, everything says who I am on paper. It's screaming very loudly,
Yeah.
but because of this implicit or maybe explicit bias that you
Mhm.
have, you're just not going to trust me because I don't look like you.
Yep. Yep. And I realized that I was literally mimicking the same behavior. So for me, I always tell my husband, like, I don't think I'm employable, meaning I am not the person who is going to come in and try to sell somebody else. Like, I put it on the resume for a reason. I interviewed a certain way for a reason. This is the person you're going to get. You're not going to get the Lanisha who's going to go around and try to make friends with everybody. I don't care about anything. I care about the work
Mhm,
and you getting the value you put in that you pay on that invoice. But
mhm,
outside of that, you're not getting a performance out of me.
mhm,
And I realized at 25, when on my first performance review, that big corporate performance review, and my manager's like, Lanisha, you're doing a great job, but I need you to play the game. And I was like, what game you talking about, ma'am? Like, what are you
mhm,
talking about? And she's like, the managers don't know you. Like, you're so quiet. You just come in and you work. And I'm like, isn't that the ideal situation?
right,
And my husband was like, no, you have to perform. And I'm like, I don't perform for nobody. And I became very much like angry and resentful that nobody told me that this was the trajectory of being in corporate America.
mhm,
And so when I came out of corporate America through getting, fired for speaking up for myself, I was like, I can't do this. Like, it's such an energy drain to try to be someone else
mhm,
and then still wear the hat of wife, mommy, daughter, sister, friend, accountant. I'm like, I don't have the energy bank to do all of that. And I just realized, like, that's just a puzzle I don't think I should try to solve or be a part of.
yeah.
And for those who do well in that type of system or environment, then kudos to you. I actually applaud you because it's not easy to
Yeah.
keep that up.
Oh no. It's not easy to play the game in corporate America. It's not easy to play the game when you're trying to progress in your career, because that's really the only reason why
Yeah.
people do that, is because they know that in order to get the attention of who they need to get the attention of, to network, to build relationship, sometimes people are building relationships on faulty foundations and premises, because they feel like, when we think of the reality of true relationship building, it should come from an authentic presentation, right? But a lot of times when we're building relationships, because we are taught to play those games, and because we are taught to perform, because we are taught that we have to look a certain way when we're doing our job, then it takes away from the authentic presentation of relationship building, which actually means that your relationships that you're building are not, they're not real.
They're not real at all.
Right? They're not real. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, that, I think a lot of people can see themselves in that, that moment of transparency that you gave. So in the corporate space, when you decided after corporate wasn't what you needed to do and you were ready to transition into working for yourself in this financial space, because did what you do in corporate is what you do now, or some element of it? How did you transition out of that?
Yeah, some element of it. I was at HSBC Bank as a senior accountant on their corporate accounting team. And this was like my third full-time job out of college. So that tells you how long I've been a consultant.
Yeah.
And a year in, and when she presented that performance review, I was like, I can't keep this up. This is like exhausting. A year in, my husband was presented with the opportunity to kind of get his investment licenses and the Series 6, 63, like all of these licenses. And then we started to learn for ourselves about how to invest in the stock market. And when we started to learn, I was like, I need this. I got a whole accounting degree and I barely understand how my 401k work. I barely understand how the markets work. I know how companies manage and organize the organization's money, but I don't know anything about personal finances. And so I opened up that door and God was like, okay, ma'am. So it was literally like, paydays. My focus was being distracted towards doing appointments in the evening with people and trying to get them to learn how to budget and just get these companies out of their household that was eating away at their budget. So for me, I'm a spreadsheet person. I had nothing to do on a Friday. That direct deposit hit. I'm like, let me put together a spreadsheet. How much is going to Comcast? How much is going to both card notes? How much are we actually funneling into our savings accounts? How much are we putting on credit card debt and student loan? I was like, oh no. So when you move from looking at things on a monthly basis to an annual basis, because we're working for a year's worth of income, I was like, we're sending travel money to Comcast. Dodge is already a huge corporation. They don't need any more debt from us. And so those revelations had my head spinning. Like, we are literally working to just be on the P&L of other companies.
Wow.
And I was like, not me. And so the problem is, in true Capricorn fashion, when I'm ready to work, I expect everybody around me to say, let's go. And my husband's like, girl, what are you talking about? This lifestyle is great. Why are you trying to change stuff? Pump your brakes. And so I had a revelation in my mindset, but he didn't. Right. So at the time we were renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Rogers Park, down the street from Loyola University, prime area, great area. I was like, fam, this ain't it. This ain't it. Paying rent. We don't own an asset, a hard asset, like paying bills, and we got a couple $1,000 possibly to put into a savings account. Like, nah, this ain't the life for me. This ain't the life for me. And so,
and to him, he thought that you guys were
we're comfortable. We was cool.
you were
Like,
good.
why are you trying to shake the boat,
Right,
ma'am?
right.
And it took it took me. We were living in a walk up. If you know Chicago, there's courtyard buildings where you're in a great area, but there's no street parking. You're driving around for maybe 20 minutes looking for a parking space.
The death of me.
Oh my gosh.
The death of me coming from Florida. I said,
Oh my gosh.
have any just parking that's supposed to be for where we going. What is this street parking? That was the biggest. That was probably one of the. I'm sorry, I interrupt. That was one of the biggest transitions for me. I had to transform my mind to realize that I got to leave 15 minutes early because I got to budget time to ride around the place that I'm going for 5 days.
Yes. And I was like, I had started parking on the street. We would park a block away. Now, you know how Chicago winters are.
Yeah.
You got to defrost your car. I'm like, I'm going to work to do all this. No.
Right.
So we end up paying for a parking spot, extra on the rent. And I'm like, this can't be life. We're spending $1,200 to $1,300 a month plus a parking space. I was like, we need to buy. Mm-hmm. And I went to take my dog out to, do his thing. That sucker crossed me with the leash and I went tumbling down the stairs and fractured my foot. I was like, nah, that's it. I'm not paying rent. It's time to buy a house. So my husband's like, okay, cool. Everything was kind of increasing at that time. We end up buying a house. 6 months later, after closing, he gets laid off. I'm like, okay, 50%. We go from a 6-figure household to now $60,000. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, ooh, okay, let's get you back into the market. Mm-hmm. Being a Black person trying to get back into corporate is a hard enough hurdle. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just grow this business, helping people with their personal finances. I was getting no after no after no. And in the financial services industry, we get paid on a number of ways. So like you can help someone with, setting up a 401k plan or retirement plan, you paid on those assets. And then as you help them grow, so you have to build up your clientele. It's very much just sales driven, right? With numbers attached to it. Mm-hmm. And so I think God was preparing me to build up a confidence that I didn't think I had until other people was telling me across the table, like, man, you are a good teacher and you really break it down very easily for us. And that's what I took away from those 2 years of being licensed and getting the no's and getting the rejection. Like, yes, I would have loved to have made money. We didn't make a whole lot of money, but it brought so much confidence in education, presenting, and putting people in a space of trust. Mm-hmm. And, conveying a concept that so many of us, it feels like it's just not touchable, to being really accessible. And I was like, okay. So people just started referring me, and I grew my business on referrals. Mm-hmm. And I realized like social media was a great platform for my introvertedness, because although I like people, I have a capacity for people. Mm-hmm. And it's not them. I think they always think it's them. It's really just an energy drink. I love being alone. I like reading. I like, watching documentaries and movies. I love writing and coloring. Mm-hmm. So I get my energy from being alone. And if you can imagine being on 4 and 5 calls a day, and then you have to do the work, and then you have to, that's an energy drain. So mm-hmm. It brought a very much a boundary builder for me as an activity. Mm-hmm. I learned to speak about like my growth trajectory using social media, because I felt like people on social media were very fake and phony and trying to sell like lifestyle marketing. And I hated it because that's not the reality. Yeah. And so I grew basically telling the truth and sharing my stuff in storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I just started getting opportunities.
Which now is the preferred way to market anyway, is storytelling and transparency and vulnerability and telling the truth instead of, trying to appease or talking a language that someone is trying to present anyway, because your goal is to break down that barrier.
Yep.
Right. Let's talk on a one-on-one, honest communication level, that platform of honest communication. So yeah, I totally understand. I'm in that space right now, just marketing from that place and trying to connect with people who need what you have. You have to be able to break that separating the two of you all and the person from receiving it.
Yep. And this was 5 years ago when I was getting licensed. When I was licensed, I realized like social media was the way to build an audience. But if you know anything about financial services, it's very much white Caucasian men who are given large asset dollars. So people think of like the Charles Schwabs, the Fidelities, the TD Ameritrade.
Yeah.
You can get paid really well, but your network has to have money.
Correct.
And coming from West Side of Chicago, firstborn, first gen in college, going to Lane Tech, I was the first.
Yeah.
So my network don't have nothing.
Right. And you're building your network.
I'm building my network
with the type of people that you want your network to hold.
Yep. But not knowing that in this industry, that sharks and whales go to white men in blue blazers.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yep.
And so, although I had a passion to teach financial education and get black people to invest, it wasn't paying my bills. And I am not one who, I need stability. I like nice things. I like experiences.
Yeah.
And so I decided, you know what? I can do it on the side and still have a stable income by still doing accounting. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of small businesses growing every day that don't have a clue how accounting and bookkeeping work. Why not just offer it to them? Because what's complicated for them is like a cakewalk for me, seeing the messes that I see in corporate. So I'm like, that's my jam right there. That's my thing. And so instead of just focusing on financial education and personal finance, I decided to shift to small business owners whose livelihood depended on their business.
Right.
And I pretty much just didn't have to market. Like my storytelling on social media, I would get people who had so much money in my DMs, in my inbox, that I had no reason to market ever again. I literally stopped dropping my discovery call link because my calendar was full. And God was like, didn't I tell you stop worrying? Because I'm a worrier.
Yeah.
Come from the lights being cut off and me having to walk to the food stamp office on Pulaski. Like I come from, my mom telling me, you got this many in the food stamp book, don't spend more than this, right? And so that having limited financial resources, I don't like that.
Yeah.
At all.
And scarcity mindsets follow us even if we don't want them to follow us.
It's still like
experiences
on me, because the moment my bank account gets below a certain number, I'm still like, what I got to get it back to the threshold, because I know what it feels like to do everything right.
Yeah. And still
be in the negative. Had to go through bankruptcy, couldn't get a job, couldn't get a client. I don't like that. And so I have attributed in just the past 10 years realizing about myself, where's my weight gain coming from? Stress, overthinking, worried about stuff I can't control, but also too microaggressions, overcompensating, hyperindependence. So it's just been a shift like every 5 to 10 years about like this shield of reality just like comforting me, but also I'm having to strip away a lot of the brainstorming that I've been conditioned to believe. And I'm having to just talk people through like, yes, you earned $1 million, but you don't have to do things like company A. You can do things like company B. You can hire a chef, like you can hire cleaners. Let's just put it in the budget. And so it's just having those thoughts that we as Black women typically have, but in confidence, and putting an implementation plan in place. So it's not just a dream we shelve, but it's something we're truly working towards, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And I think going back to you saying, so this is kind of where we tie in the financial wellness to some of the other wellness elements that the platform focuses on. So, just to remind the viewers and the listeners, we focus on financial wellness, spiritual wellness, emotional, mental, and physical wellness. And as she mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, she mentioned, when she's looking at herself and how she started gaining weight, right? And then you looked at gaining weight and tied that to stress, which if we took that a little bit further, stress because of what, right? We go back to our financial wellness or our financial unwellness, if you will, or our emotional unwellness, which may possibly be caused by our financial unwellness, or
Mm-hmm.
our mental unwellness, which might be caused by our physical unwellness, which might be caused by our financial unwellness, right?
Exactly.
And so it all just links. I mean, I remember when I was going through these physical issues of menopause and having moved to Chicago and not really understanding like what that was going to look like. Why was I here? And then God like taking me through this whole journey of physical unwellness, albeit for a purpose. Now that
Mm-hmm.
I'm very mindful of, and I know why he was taking me through that. But at the time I didn't. My finances were being affected by that because personally for me, I was investing in so many different um, solutions that
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking was going to help me get better,
Yeah.
right? From a physical standpoint, my financials were being, yes, I had a full-time job, and yes, every couple of years my finances would increase tremendously because thankful to God that since being in Chicago, I've always been able to scale in my employment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even having said all that, I'm one of those people, Nisha. I'm one of those people who do not subscribe, and y'all don't do as I do. Okay, don't do as I do, because I am a different kind of person. But I'm one of those people, always have been, who does not subscribe to working a job for 30, 35 years and
Mm-hmm.
putting away like for retirement and retiring on a percentage of that and all that. Like that's just not who I've ever been. Like even from a small child, I just remember being like maybe 10 or 11, maybe 12 years old. And I remember saying two things. I said, when I become an adult, I want to make a lot of money and I don't want to be married. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason why
That's
that
me.
was like that was because my parents loved my mom and dad. My mom and dad loved each other, but they had this kind of turbulent kind of relationship with one another where they always argued about money.
Yep.
And so I was an only child, only biological child in the family. And I'm looking at them always argue about money. Like my dad had all these great ideas. My dad owned a gas station that he
Wow.
was able to purchase on the beach side. That gas station, had he had the financial aptitude and had the financial knowledge and teaching or mentorship to be able to teach him how to maintain businesses, my dad would have left a tremendous legacy. But my dad lost the gas station, and then my dad had this big dream that he wanted. He was a construction worker, so he started his own construction business, and he had different construction workers working for him, but he didn't know how to run a business. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what he had no idea what that was. I remember my uncle, one of my dad's brothers, owned a trucking business, and he came to my dad and asked my dad, "Hey, what do you think about going into partnership with me and we can have this Butler Trucking company together?" And my dad told him no. Like all and my uncle now, mind you, went ahead and built his trucking company and was able to send his daughters to college and was able to do all this other stuff and leave legacies or whatever. But my dad, because he was just living in this mindset of poverty and living in this mindset of scarcity and couldn't quite see
Mm-hmm.
himself coming out of what he was in for so long, kind of translated over or transferred, it translated to what I saw between my
Mm-hmm.
mom and my dad, couples arguing all the time about money. So I was like, I don't want to get married.
No parts. Mm-hmm.
I want to have a lot of money. I want to make a lot of money because that's what I perceive as being the biggest problem with
Mm-hmm.
adults. is they get married, they don't know how to manage their money, they argue about it, they get divorced, and then at the end of the day, they don't have money. My mom was working job after job. She was working $12,000 a year one year. Like, and to this day, I'm like, God, I can't believe my mom raised me and
Right.
maintained off of $12,000 a year at one point in time. And this wasn't like way back in the 50s, Nisha. This
Mm-hmm.
was like I was in high school in like 90s, so this is like in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just seeing all of that. And so because I had that mindset growing up over time, I found myself just trying to create all these different things in my life that would hopefully transfer over to money,
Yep.
right? Where I didn't have that worry.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm honest, and I always say, if honesty is a thing, and for me, honesty is a thing, it hindered me for so many years. And I personally, I'm being very transparent on my platform right here, but I don't stay at jobs for a very long time, primarily because I get very bored, right? And
Right.
I have an entrepreneurial spirit. I'm a business owner. I love doing that stuff. I honestly believe that before I leave this earth one day, that God is really going to answer my prayer and doing the things that I want to do for Him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Building businesses and helping women in ways that glorify Him, which is my focus now. But for the very longest, I was doing things just trying to chase all this money dream and chase this financial like perception that I had because of what I saw when I was younger. And now I'm at this age where I told my husband, me and my husband just got married last December, and I told him, I said, we are going to be on an aggressive. He's 8 years older than me, 9 years, 8 or 9 years, depending on how the year falls. But I told him, I said, we are on a very aggressive fast track to retire in 5 years.
Yep.
Like, I want to retire when I'm 55. He'll be 63. I don't want us to be working for anybody at that time. We need to be really, doing ministry, doing our business, real estate investment, whatever it is, and just maximizing that whole thing. But it's a very aggressive and lofty desire right now because in the reality of everything, we're not in a position to say in 5 years we're going to retire.
Right.
That's something that we're working towards and that we want to build towards. And I just look back like, where did this thought process come from? And for a lot of the women, I think, who are listening to this podcast or even have these experiences, like you mentioned earlier, are scarcity mindsets
Mm-hmm.
and different types of mindsets that have followed them through the course of their lifetime.
For me, the number one thing I was running away from, I was actually chasing. I was attracting.
Mm-hmm.
So just chasing after the money activity,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I saw my family doing. The money activity is important, but what are we going to have left over after we do the activity, right? And so I just wanted, we thought that, oh, they're arguing about not having enough money, but what if they had enough money and not the literacy, not the strategy,
Right.
not the application,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we've been conditioned to believe that in order for us to have a lot of money in the bank or of our savings accounts, brokerage accounts, that we actually have to work for it. But what I realized and learned that you have to own and have assets that create
Absolutely.
cash flow.
Absolutely.
And so when I was in these streets sitting, across people's kitchen tables or their coffee tables, and they're telling me, oh no, I don't need a retirement account. I'm like, okay, in my head, let's see how you feel in 10 years when you've gone through COVID. Mm-hmm. When you, like me, had to go through a double lung infection and had to be hospitalized, and you physically can't be in an office on a laptop working. Right. We don't think that far because we've been so conditioned to believe that we are literally going to work until 70, not realizing those are stressors.
Yeah. I agree.
And when we physically can't work because of medical issues, death, divorce, relationships fail, what's your fallback plan? Active work versus passive strategies. And that's what I was trying to convey across the kitchen table. And so I said, you know what? Instead of me trying to convince people to do it, I'm going to figure it out for myself. And then I'm going to work with the people that got the money.
Yeah.
And I had to just stop talking to the people with no money.
Yeah.
Because that's a mindset jump that I'm not a therapist. I'm not a financial psychologist. I
Yeah.
can pray for you, wish the best for you, and I'm gonna check on you in 2 years. But I can't stick around in this mindset. I have to elevate because I got to get out what I was taught.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so now, which I posted a couple days ago, the stuff I was ranting about in 2005, everybody's talking about.
Absolutely. I was just about to say, we're living in a time now where the things that you were just saying, sitting across the table from people, I was literally just about to say, I think we're in a time now where it's a little bit like people are gradually starting to understand generational wealth and gradually starting to understand passive income streams and passive ways to retirement and different things like that, which back in 2005 or 2007 or 2008 when the real estate market like crashed, all this back in those times, no one could think past, oh my God, I have to work my way to retirement.
Yep.
And that was one of the reasons why when I talk to my husband and I tell him we're on a very aggressive plan and strategy to retire in 5 years, he knows exactly what I'm talking about because I'm here. I'm with the passive stuff.
Yep.
Like that's always been my mindset. It's just been just been me like trying to put in place the means by which all that passive type stuff would come about.
Yep.
But I think we're living in a time, just looking across social media and just listening to people talk, I think we're in a place where people are, real estate investing and figuring out how to get more assets that's going to work to their advantage and, how to invest more, learning investment strategies in the market and different things like that. I think we're in a place, and tell me if I'm wrong or what you see differently, but I think we're in a place where people are a little bit more open to maybe sitting down and having those conversations as opposed to maybe 15 or 20 years ago.
And I think they're open because they're tired.
Yeah.
We're exhausted. We're burnt out. And we're seeing that literally nobody is coming to save us. Literally, our government has their own agenda. And there's things about our society that they just work a certain way. And people are coming to the realization that I don't have to be in an office commuting to make a great income.
Yeah.
That's about consumerism. If we really want to talk about it, like think about you leaving your house in your $30,000 debt, traveling to an office. You're probably going to stop for coffee. So you spent some money there. You're probably going to stop at Mariano's, get, McDonald's somewhere. You're funding consumerism to and from work.
Yeah.
So when you stop that, you're stopping the pockets and the profits of a lot of companies, right? But when I was trying to tell y'all that, back then when I was getting calls about working in corporate, why do you need me to come sit at a desk to talk on instant messenger?
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
When you say it like that,
we're literally sitting on laptops.
The weirdest thing in the world.
On the computer. Why am I commuting for that? Oh, real estate, commercial real estate is impacted by that.
Yeah.
The food industry is impacted by that. The gas, and I won't be a part of that. I will figure out how to make money from this $100 Walmart chair and this $1,700 Mac computer.
Yeah.
And if y'all can't figure it out, exclude me. And so I had to get to a point where I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because I just don't understand how we could work 40 hours a week and still have nothing to show for it. And so for me, I can't, like, it's going to keep me up at night if I don't figure out a way to get off of this matrix.
Yeah.
And I try to show people how they can kind of do the same. Because if you're like me, you notice when you walk into an establishment, a store, an organization, and you see that one white manager and everybody around them working the system is of color, and the freedom that they have, but the people of color look like they're struggling and exhausted. I don't like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to allow my son to have to go into a community and literally go through the same thing that I realized or got gave me the vision to see.
Yeah.
And I don't want your kids to have to deal with that, your
Yeah.
nieces and nephews, your cousins, because they don't have to do it. So do we.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if whatever asset plan that they're keeping away from us, I'm the person sitting there like, oh, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is how we do it here.
Right.
And it's really that simple. It's really that simple, but it goes back to give me your hand. Do you trust that I'm gonna put this plan together and I'm not gonna let yourself off the hook? And if you gotta go blow a bag and come back to it in a year, let's do it. Because at the end of the day, we can't take it with us. But what if we live a long, healthy, fruitful life?
Exactly.
So it has to be a balance to it. There has to be some type of planning to it, but you don't have to do it alone. There's community ready when your mindset shifts, when you're physically ready to change it. You're going to have community. Yeah. Just let us know when you're ready. But in the meantime, Lanisha ain't going to stop growing. This train ain't stopping because you're not comfortable with what I'm talking about. And you're also not going to take me off my journey, right? So I'm big about savoring the conversations I have, but also putting myself in communities where people think way differently from me. And I'm realizing like I still have to grow and know that yes, nepotism exists. Yes, you're going to have to probably build relationships and come off of the computer. So it's a balancing act.
Always.
It's a balancing act.
Wow. All right. So yeah, we can actually extend that conversation so much further, but I'm gonna transition over to something else because we have about, let me see, we have about 15 minutes.
Okay.
So here's what I wanted to talk about a little bit here. When working with women, what are some so I know you said that you kind of transitioned into working with small businesses, but a lot of those small businesses are owned by women.
Yep.
So like kind of thinking back to when you were working with women and also thinking to how you're working with women who are owners of small businesses, what are some of the unwell practices that you've seen across the board? Because I know that so one of the things that I'm definitely committed on educating women about financial wellness, as I mentioned to you before, and making it a thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if honestly we look at financial wellness as an actual like financial unwellness being a sickness.
Yes.
As is mental unwellness, as is emotional unwellness. These things, spiritual unwellness, these things are a sickness. Yep. And sicknesses can infiltrate the body and cause you to be unwell, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I'm very committed as an educator to help women, particularly Black women, but not specifically. I always want to say that, to understand that financial wellness is a thing. And then number two, making that thing a priority.
Yep.
So when we think about the women that you have worked with in the past and maybe now, what are some of the unwell practices that you've seen across the board? Because I think it's necessary for us to call those out so that it brings a sense of awareness to the women who are listening to the podcast. So they can be like, oh, that's me. That's something that I do. Or that's something that I've been doing. I didn't even realize I was doing that. And then kind of talking about how to maybe alleviate those unwell practices or how to fix those unwell practices a little bit.
I know starting with me, because I built up hyper independence because I was the oldest. I didn't care for my environment. And so I did everything I possibly could to get into environments where I was uncomfortable, but I knew I needed to grow. So asking for help and understanding that if there's a topic, a subject, a theory, a concept, or situation you're not clear about, keep asking until it makes sense. Like you should be able to give me the surface level understanding of it when you've truly comprehended it. And until you get to a point where you're like, I know what a stock is versus a mutual fund, keep asking. because that's how we learn, right? And give yourself grace for saying, like, I just don't get it. I don't understand it. It's not clicking for me.
Right.
Keep asking, because I do believe there's a certain attraction of resources that start to come your way when you start to focus on something. So you may end up attracting a person, money, resources, and organization that you need to make a shift because you keep asking, right? The second thing is Black, and I say this on my social media feeds all the time. Black and brown people don't have no problem making cash. We got it. We know how to make it. We are great cash generators, but we have to shift from being just cash generators to being strategy thinkers, right? And so I always tell people, think about like that CEO. The CEO is the top highest paid person typically in the organization on the financials, but are they doing all the things? Yeah. No, they are the vision leader. They're keeping everybody abreast of the mission. They're usually delegating, and they're a really good generalist about what's happening across the organization. They don't know everything the day in, day out. You have to do that in your business because you can't scale and grow and move to the next level and walk in your purpose if you're trying to do all the things thinking you're saving money. You're actually messing up. And a lot of the women that I work with are usually at one of three phases. They're just starting, coming out of corporate, consultant on a 1099 basis. They still have their W-2 job, and they're like, I don't want to mess none up. Teach me the basics or just do it for me. That's a level 2. You don't have to necessarily have an advisor, CFO, accountant, or retainer out of pocket. One-time project consulting. There's clients I consult with once a year. Let me check your QuickBooks. Let's see what you touched. This is good. This is good. Don't do this. Start doing this. And now you have a loan video you can refer back to when it's time to do taxes, right? There's a second tier of person who they've gone viral on social media. They've gotten huge contracts. They've gotten deals with the city, 7-8 figure $1 million book deals, and they just blowing the money because they can't settle themselves enough to sit down and be strategic and organized. So they can't cut off the cash flow, but then they feel like they can't get to the work. So they're like in this middle seesaw phase. And that's the biggest market that I have. And for them, it's not about the money. It's not that they can't afford it. It's about the commitment of moving out of the technician thinker to a CEO. They have the biggest mindset about trying to either save money or DIY, save money or DIY, because they don't understand how it truly works in corporate. They think corporate is perfect. They think nonprofit organizations that are doing billions of dollars a year is perfect. It's not. They have many, many, many specialists every day working on the many, many fires every day, and they're paying them. But there's fires still growing. But they hire people. They hire consultants. They hire project managers to work on these many problems. And then you got that third person that they've made so much money in a good amount of time, you can't tell them nothing because the IRS ain't came after them yet. They ain't came after them yet. They're doing things so wrong. It's like, oh my God, do I even want to touch this? My business insurance is probably not a good thing to cover. And so for them, it's like temperament testing. I'm about to do a personality quiz at that point because it's not about the money. They've convinced themselves that they know what they're doing, and so nobody else can tell them anything.
Because they're making the money.
Because they're making the money, which is cool. Yeah. I respect it.
Yeah.
Because that's how America is run.
But which is also dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially the money coming out the business paying for the tuition,
the
daycare, the mortgage, the food, the groceries, the cart. One labor department audit.
Yeah.
One IRS audit. Because when it comes to us, they're not going to wait till you have one small problem. They're going to wait till it builds.
Oh, that's the feds, period.
They're going to wait till it builds.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how
They
they operate.
don't want, I believe, we have to have a society
Mhm.
of financially dependent people in order for our system to continue to run.
Absolutely.
So they're not going to wait until it's a small problem. They're going to wait till they can wipe out everything, especially for us. When their algorithm says in their computer system to pick out Black business owners' tax returns,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you want to play with this thing,
Yeah.
do your thing, friend.
Yeah. And
I'm not going to argue with you.
but I think so, Nisha, I think that that goes to, so this is a belief system that I have in terms of like Black business owners in
In general,
general, but
yeah.
Black business owners. Um, it goes back to what you said earlier that, we know how to generate money,
Yep.
right? What the one thing that God has done with us, and I speak about us because I am us, right? I can't really speak in huge detail about Caucasian individuals because I'm not Caucasian. I don't spend a lot of time in that community of people. But I can talk about African American people, and God has done his good work,
Good work.
and he created us, and when he gave us the ability to be creative. And that's what I tell people about God in and of himself. We are made in the image of God, which means if God is a creative person, we are creative people.
Yep.
The problem that we run into is what you just got finished talking about is people believe that they have the ability to create and they have the ability to do something well. And so they also equally think they have the ability to be a great business owner.
Yes.
And because they are generating money in such fashion and in such influx, then they get to the point where I know what I'm doing. I'm making money. So clearly I must be a great business person, which means I don't need to learn the art of business
Yep.
or the science of business, really. Business ownership is the science.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get to that. And I think that, like you mentioned, is where we always get caught up because of something that you said a few minutes ago is when the algorithm tells the IRS or any federal government entity that hones in on our finances, hey, select about 10 Black businesses
Yeah.
and let's look at what they're doing. And then at that point, it's like, no, player, it's too late.
Yep.
Like, this is what I was trying to get you to understand from me. It's not about how much money, like, we are very talented individuals. We know how to generate money. We can do it. And we can get people to trust us to do it.
Yep.
But are you able to be a great business person? And I think that's the difference between us and the white man with the blue jacket, what you talked about earlier.
I don't think it's different. It's just that I think that they know they can trust
How
me.
to and circumvent, true, and possibly
They
circumvent.
know that if they're gonna put a plan together to work in their favor, it can be entrusted to stay within that community.
Correct.
And everybody is in alignment and on the same page. They're gonna run the play. And once they build up the cash flow for lobbyists to work in their favor, now it's normal.
I agree with that.
Don't mean it's right.
Right. Correct.
It's now normal.
Yeah.
Where we fall is, I believe, humility. You can't ever tell me there's nothing I can't keep learning about. Until the day I die,
Correct.
somebody is going to teach me something that I don't know.
Absolutely.
And I'm open to that. As great as I think I am, I still don't feel like I've hit the peak or the pinnacle of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And so because I have this level of humility and humbleness about, if I do get a 7 or 8 figure client, I'm going to congratulate them, but I'm not walking in insecurity. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I know what I've seen. So you can't talk to me just because I haven't made it yet, because my value is not equated into dollars. And so that's why I use my platform to talk about the contracts I've won, the opportunities I've pitched for, because I'm not scared to compete. I can work for Planned Parenthood, a $1 billion organization, and I can show you what you're missing. Have I made $1 billion yet? Nope. But my value is there.
Yeah.
So when I get those types of clients, I set the standard and the structure. You're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to tell you, here's the way we can be compliant. I'm going to give you 3 opportunities to get on board. That third one, I'm going to release you because I don't want no trouble. And I don't want to see your family attract trouble because I don't want that on my back. And I don't want to be linked to that.
Right.
So ego, I don't care about ego. I've seen ego. Ego has nothing to do with where it'll help, but I think that's professional confidence. You got to know how to turn that on and off.
Yeah.
And I'm just not the professional to work with if you feel like you're going to use ego over being compliant, because I care about my people.
Yeah.
So when I get a client like that, that's where it becomes a prospective client. It's where it becomes like a personality quiz. Are you coachable?
Right.
Do you ask questions? Like, do you actually want to learn? Or are you just looking for someone to implement what you feel like you should do? If so, I'm not the best fit for you, but I wish you the best. And we got to be cool with saying that, because every client or invoice payment ain't a good one.
Absolutely not. That's another thing I think we have to learn.
Because if they can't keep a professional relationship, where it being in a CFO or account, you're the common denominator, friend.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that professional may have dropped the ball somewhere, but why are you flipping people back to back? That's a warning for me.
Yeah.
And so I've come to learn that if I say no more than I say yes, I'm going to get to in front of the organizations, the people, and opportunities I'm supposed to be in front of. Because there's a reason why that no is sitting in my belly. There's a reason why that feeling is sitting in my belly, and I have to listen to it. It can't be about the dollar amount. It can't be about a bill I got to pay. It can't be about hitting a money goal. It has to be about people. Because at the end of the day, I do believe that I think he's put me here to teach in truth.
Yeah.
And I can't do that wasting time with people who ain't ready.
Correct.
So I'm learning to trust that a little bit more. And I hope that people are understanding of that. That I'm no nonsense when it comes to that.
When you're talking about financial wellness or unwellness, you got to be no nonsense.
Like, we don't have time to play. They've stolen so much time from us. Think about, like, being in kindergarten through high school. Is that necessary? And then we turn around and get into debt for college. Which I think is extremely important. Mm-hmm. But we went through the stressors of trying to figure out how to pay for that. And then we still didn't learn. We really didn't learn really good relationship building, networking, negotiating, strategic pitching, which I think we should have learned. Now you're coming out of college and you're expected to know all of these things going into a job. And so you spend a decade figuring out these dynamics. Mm-hmm. Now you're 30 plus and you're exhausted.
And so here's the thing, you're exhausted, but then from the corporate standpoint, now you're marketable. Because you've taken all this, you've taken those 10 years on your end, you've taken these 10 years to learn, right?
Yes.
And from the perception and the perspective of the corporate arena where you are now, we can really give them the positions that they need, because it's almost kind of like that catch-22 thing where we can't hire you because you don't have any experience, but how am I going to get experience if you can't hire me?
Exactly.
But they hire people and people put in these 10 years and they're getting all this experience. But like you said, at the end, they're exhausted. But from the perspective of corporate, now you're ready.
You're ready. You're seasoned.
But I'm exhausted.
I can't even. There's people who cringe waking up. I used to cringe Sunday because that's your last countdown to an environment where you're not thriving. You're literally sitting there doing your 5 tasks a week, hoping to spread out that 8 hours. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
There's no better way to spend our time.
Right.
And so my biggest thing right now is I just can't see Gen Z doing the same thing that millennials did and not being like, no, fam, not doing that. What's the other way? What's the other door holding?
Well, if we're honest, millennials ain't doing half the stuff that we did
because they weren't listening.
So I could definitely see what you're saying.
Right? It's like the now I feel like it's a season of trying to figure out what job works best for your lifestyle. And then while you're working that job, how can you communicate about the value you put in that position into what you're either going to contribute to the world, to your consulting clients, to your community. You can't just be housed in your performance review.
Right.
Because there's no reason for us to keep walking into those walls and not talking about our contribution in those four walls. Right. Take it off the paper. This is my belief. What you do on paper, it needs to be blasted throughout the world. Because people really need to know how dope you are.
Yeah.
And if you think about, and I tell women, like, especially in accounting, who do you think is training Chad? Us.
Right.
We're not the CFOs, accounting managers, controllers. You barely see Black people on that accounting floor. Who's training Brian and Sarah? Us. So I'm gonna talk my talk.
Right. Right.
When I get that contract, and I'm gonna translate it to social media, and y'all gonna know that I'm not playing. And so that's how you get that's how you never have to ask for a discovery call again. Because the water cooler talks about how much are you getting paid? Are you getting paid the same as Chad? Chad is getting paid this, and I'm doing a, $230. Take that away from the water cooler and start blasting it. Because what then happens is you start to get people who are like, I'm going through the same thing. I'm tired of going through the same thing. Let me talk about my greatness too. And it brings about a confidence that I believe changes systems. It changes culture. Maybe in a couple of decades, maybe in 50 years. But we have to stop being scared about this facade of white gaze. Like, it's not even real.
Yeah.
And so that's my mission, like getting these new people confident. The confidence I didn't have as an 18-year-old.
That's what you're helping people get.
Let's get confident. Let's learn how to communicate. Let's say I researched this position. These are the ranges. What is the budget for the role?
Yeah. I think that's perfect. This is okay. So, Nisha, this is a great conversation. Oh my God. I knew that financial wellness is going to be a great conversation. So guess what? We're going to have a part 2. We've been talking for like an hour and almost 30 minutes. We are going to have a part 2. And I hope that the people who are looking at this will tune in for part 2. But I'm going to go ahead and pause right here because we're going to have a part 2. So as I hope that you all are thinking this is as good as I know it's good in having this conversation with her, but I think that financial wellness is such an important element of our lives. We have to get this. And I like what she's talking about now is how if you're not, like if there's something in your life that something in your life that you don't feel like you're being maximized or appreciated, and you have that knowledge, that's something that no one can take away from you. So how do you now transfer that knowledge to the next place? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this and a little bit more in part 2. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check off and I'm going to log off from this particular episode, which happens to be episode number 12. 11? Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Episode 11?
This is 11.
Episode 11 of the Healthy Woman Podcast. We're going to have a part 2, which is going to be episode 12 of the Healthy Woman Podcast. But episode 11 of the Healthy Woman Podcast, my name is Dr. Makeba. Remember, if you have not shared this episode out with somebody already, I need for you to do it right now because you already know it's fire. And every single woman needs to hear this conversation that me and Nisha are having. So if you have not shared this episode out, please do so. If you're listening on the Apple or the Spotify streaming platform, make sure that you're giving us a 5-star rating and comment. Let us know what you think about all of this. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then join us for part 2 of this conversation with the great, amazing financial expert guru. I'm calling her all the stuff, all the things. I'm calling her everything. Miss Nisha Mohip. Again, my name is Dr. Makeba. I'm your host of the Healthy Woman Podcast. I love you, and there's nothing that you can do about it. I'll see you next time. Peace.